Oh my god, shut up! Yes, of course, Midnight Sun is here, and I made a video hyping it up in the beginning of the year, so of course I have to make a video about the book. I read like 650 pages in a matter of 2 days because it got on my nerves. I knew what was gonna happen. It's not like there were spoilers. I was still taken by surprise, and I was still thoroughly invested in the story, which I guess, and I hate to give this compliment to her, I guess is still good writing, because it's a story I've already read over and over and over again from different points of view, but it comes with the territory of liking Twilight is loathing a book and yet thoroughly enjoying reading it. There is no explanation. Usually when I review something, books, movies, whatever, I will go through the storyline, but at this point, if you don't know the story of Twilight, that's on you, and I'm not gonna go through the storyline. So obviously with this book, and with any Twilight book, there are things that I really like or love even, and things that I have a deep-seated hatred for. So I'm going to start with something that I like. Let's just kick the video off on a positive note, perhaps. So we see more of Bella's character that we didn't get to see in Twilight, because unfortunately, since Twilight is narrated by Bella and she sees herself as a kind of boring, average person, she doesn't give us certain details about her life and her character that would make her more well-rounded because she doesn't see it as important. So for example, when Edward and Bella were playing like the 20 questions every day, we actually get to see Bella's answers because Bella didn't include her own answers in the book, but this time we get pages and pages worth of Bella's answers, and it's little things like, you know, her favorite snacks, her favorite colors, but then it's things like her home and why she loved it in Arizona, and her mom and why she feels this protective urge over her mom. And we also get to see Bella stand up for her friends. This is when Edward's not around and he's eavesdropping on her, obviously. Multiple times someone is getting made fun of at the table, Bella steps in and stops it, either takes up for them or diverges the conversation to something else so that that person is no longer being ridiculed or embarrassed. Even though she is portrayed as this very shy person, that shyness doesn't get in the way of her empathy and love for others, in her ability to stand up for them and take care of them and protect them. She's always had this overwhelming urge to protect everyone around her, and that is an ongoing theme throughout the books, and then it obviously is like her power when she's a vampire, is that she can protect people. It's nice to see some consistency in a book that, like the canon, so much of it lacks consistency, so I liked that. But that's something Bella doesn't really include about herself. She will mention like, oh, I want to protect this person, but we don't get to see her actually doing it very much in her account. But Edward notices it because every single little thing Bella does is important to Edward, just like every single little thing Edward did was important to Bella. Anyway, this is a book about Edward, but all it did was make me fall more in love with Bella. I love Miss Bella Swan more than myself. In the 11th hour, 15 years after Twilight came out, 15 years after it was established that Bella has brown eyes, I would expect this from a movie, but not from you, Stephanie. At the last minute, there's a point in the book where Edward is staring deeply into Bella's eyes and gazing at them and admiring their chocolatey warm brownness. He notices flecks of green and blue towards the center of the iris. So, like, last minute, Stephanie Meyer's trying to, like, retcon Bella into having hazel eyes? Absolutely not. I refuse to accept it. The only explanation is that sometimes brown eyes can have little flecks of different color in the middle, but they're still brown eyes, or it's just dumb and I'm refusing to acknowledge it. It just isn't canon, because that's one thing you have to do when you like Twilight, is you have to read it and then decide for yourself what is canon and what isn't, because if you allow everything to be canon, then it all sucks. But if you get to pick and choose what's canon, then it's a good series, because I trust my own mind to make a better story out of it. So I'm given the garbage and I pick through what I like, and I find the little hidden gems and I hold on to those, and the rest can just go away. Something that absolutely floored me was Edward describing that he is in hell, and these are his 4 torments. The first 2 are obvious: his thirst and his curiosity, because he can't read her mind, and so he's having to just observe Bella like a normal human person, except he can also hear at a distance and watch her from other people's minds. Whatever, he can't read her mind. But the third, mind you, there's 4. The third one, this is his top 3 worst torments. The third one's Mike Newton. Because Mike Newton had a crush on her, like, you know, a normal teenage boy. So he was always, you know, aware of Bella. He was watching Bella, he was talking to Bella, and so Edward had to watch Bella through Mike Newton's mind, so he had to spend a lot of time in there. And I guess it just started to really drive him crazy, because he said, and right there was most surprising of my torments, Mike Newton. Who would have ever dreamed that such a generic, boring mortal could be so infuriating? Just shut up. God, he thinks he's so much better than everyone, and he's really not. Great, you live forever, but you're just as annoying and stupid and selfish as everyone else. You're just made of stone. Good for freaking you. You don't even like that you are what you are. You're not better. Yes, I wanted Edward's point of view. Yes, I hate Edward. We exist. He's got his moments where I like him, but oh my god, he doesn't shut up. I mean, again, all this does is recap Twilight. This is the same story. He doesn't go any further into the beginning or the end. It's the exact same timeline. And he says so much more. Homie doesn't shut up. Speaking of things that Edward could not shut up about, was how mundane and shallow and predictable the human mind is. I mean, literally the first page, he says, when it came to the human mind, I'd heard it all before and then some. Today, all thoughts were consumed with the trivial drama of a new addition to the small student body. It took so little to work them up. The excitement over her arrival was tiresomely predictable. It was the same reaction as one would get from flashing a shiny object at a group of toddlers. Listen, like, I know you've been around the block for a while, right? And you can read minds, so I get that you probably have heard and seen a lot. But we also have like entire sections of scientific study into the human mind because it is endlessly fascinating, ever-changing, always different. There's nothing new under the sun, in that I don't believe anyone's really ever had original thought, and that's a whole long thing that is not for this video. But still, the human mind is endlessly fascinating. That's why he spends so much of this book bouncing from mind to mind all the time, reading everyone's thoughts and then focusing so much on Bella because her thoughts are so fascinating, but she's not like other humans. Yeah, she is. She shows a little more depth, so there's something special about her because they're soulmates, whatever, like fine. But don't act like she's the only human in the world to have ever had deep thought. Like, you used to be human. So did Carlisle, who's like supposedly, you know, the kindest, smartest, brilliant, whatever man in the world, and Edward, like, worships the ground he walks on. Do you think he was just shallow as a... The human mind is endlessly fascinating, so the fact that Edward thinks all humans are boring and the same means that he's just arrogant and has no friends. Also, for someone who not only used to be human, but still wishes so much that he could be human, spends like half the book just like begging to be human so he could be with Bella or just not be what he is because he loathes what he is. He hates being a vampire, everything about him. He thinks he's damned, he's going to hell, that he's just a demon walking Earth. He sure does hate humans. Make it make sense. It doesn't. It never will. Envy is much easier to live with than the overwhelming grief of watching everyone in the world have something that you can't have for all of eternity. I mean, the feeling of losing your humanity and being something otherworldly and being trapped that way. There's no going back. That choice was kind of taken from you because you didn't really get your consent before you were changed into an immortal being that has to live on blood for forever. So one of the elephants in the room is what was going through Edward's mind when he, you know, snuck into Bella's house and watched her sleep without her knowing. And I'll be honest, it's funny. Like, is it right? No, it's weird and creepy, yes. But, seeing him rationalize it is so funny, and you can't help but be like, this idiot, I feel a little bad. Like, he just really is that worked up and anxious all the time, and he's like that forever, for eternity. He's just this tense, worked up little man. He got really worked up over her safety, as he does, and the fact that at any time he thought a meteorite could come smashing through her roof and crush her in her bed is the funniest thing to me, because it's not him being like a creepy man just saying that so he can justify it. Like, he genuinely believes that. He genuinely is worried about that because he's complaining to Emmett for like hours on end about everything that can kill humans. You know, illness, car wrecks, an aneurysm. None of those he can really prevent, I don't think, but then a meteorite smashing through her roof is the final straw, and he sprints to her house in the middle of the night. And then he started thinking about any large animals, venomous snakes, scorpions, or centipedes, just a few spiders, a carbon monoxide leak. So he's like, I just need to see her. I just need to see her with my own eyes and just know that she is not dead from 1,000 different things. So he, you know, just like looks through her window. And then he even says to himself, how am I better than some sick peeping Tom? I wasn't any better. I was much, much worse. Not that he was looking at her like sexually, but he just thinks he's worse, the worst thing to ever grace the earth. He thinks he is Satan incarnate, so. And I mean, he's got kind of a point. He says, what were human rules to me after all? How many did I ignore on a daily basis? I mean, it's not right. I'm not saying it's correct. I'm just saying he's got a point. So something that really, really, gets under my skin and makes me full of fiery hatred is the fact that Stephanie took out my favorite line. Now, I want you to know, the first few chapters of this book existed online in a PDF on her website. It was leaked without her permission, but then she posted it to her website. It had been up for at least 12 years. She barely edited it. She added a few different stories like Edward and Carlisle's first Christmas together, how Carlisle tried to make it like a real Christmas, and it was really sweet. Edward didn't appreciate it the way he should have because he was like, oh, I'm a vampire. What does time have any meaning for someone like me, an immortal being? Like, shut up, just appreciate the gesture. Oh my god. Other than adding something like that, the words that already existed from the manuscript were otherwise unchanged. Nothing changed. It all stayed the same, except she took out my favorite line, and it's not just my favorite line, it's multiple people's favorite lines. Now, I know that when my video came out in May, she had probably already had this done and sent to publishers and getting it printed, right? So there's a very small chance that she saw my video and then took it out just to spite me. But there is still a chance. But I genuinely think she took it out just to spite us, because she said in an interview recently that she doesn't even remember taking it out. She said either someone who was editing the book took it out, or she took it out and just didn't remember because she always felt like she got hung up on it because it was too dramatic. Too dramatic in Twilight? Are you dense? That's the whole point. I got nothing going on. This is my source of drama, please. Anyway, she took out my favorite line, and it is, quote, oh, and also, I'm wretchedly in love with you. Who takes that out? It's Twilight. It's Edward. And you're gonna take something like that out because it's too dramatic or what, or it trips you up. That was the whole point, was it trips you up, because the whole time during that conversation when he said those words, he kept telling himself, keep it light, I don't want to be too heavy on her, like that's weird, and I'm not trying to push anything too fast, I don't even know if I should stay here, it's not safe for her, blah blah blah, everything Edward always talks about all the time because he doesn't shut up. And in his own internal dialogue he said, oh, and also, I'm wretchedly in love with you, keep it light. He still says the keep it light thing. Literally everything is the exact same, but she just took that one sentence out, and it made me want to throw this book into the Hudson River. Or at some point when Bella's like, why won't you just leave me alone? Edward says, believe me, I've tried, like again in his head. And she took that out too. That was the only two things that I can think of that she took out, and she did it just to spite me. Me, specifically. Instead, she added a ton of stuff about pomegranate seeds, which I took this off because this is annoying, which is on the cover, and to make it make sense, basically, it's the story of Persephone and Hades, and the pomegranate seeds are what kind of like damns her to hell to be with Hades. And that's how Edward, of course, views himself. Like, that's no shocker. Edward sees himself as Hades and Bella as Persephone, this innocent being, this goddess of springtime or something like that. I don't know the whole story. And he is dragging her to hell with every word he speaks to her. It's another pomegranate seed. I do really like the symbolism in that, of course. I don't mind it, but it got tiring, honestly. He just kept bringing it up towards the end. Let it go, my guy. Let it go. Something else worth mentioning is I have given Robert Pattinson a significant amount of grief for how he portrayed Edward, because in Bella's account, Edward was more smiley. You know, he was still broody, but he had more instances where he smiled and where he laughed. He was always bright and happy to be with her once they were in the meadow and stuff. We never see Edward crack a smile in the first movie unless he's like kind of being sarcastic or trying to hide something. So I wished we got to see a little more lighthearted Edward other than that godforsaken hold on tight spider monkey. Ooh, that should not have been the only time we ever see him happy. But it is. That bothered me. And then I read this. How did Robert Pattinson know? He didn't have access to this, I don't think. I mean, I think she may have given him like the first part of the manuscript. He got it down to a T because, what made me so angry was that during the times where Bella was like, oh, he seemed so light and happy to be around in the meadow, and she'd never seen him like that, and she really loved seeing him let loose and be happy and be carefree. The whole time he's in the meadow, he is stressed to the max, because leading up to that, he and Alice had a conversation where they go through all of her visions, and she's having a lot of visions conflicting, and the meadow becomes known as a knot. So she has all these different lines of visions that could lead to certain different futures, but they all become knotted at the meadow, because apparently that's like a turning point. That's going to determine the trajectory of their relationship, because basically in the meadow, there was like a good 50-50 chance he was going to kill her right then and there. So it's honestly a little disheartening, because he is such a depressed, heavy-weighted soul of a person. I really wanted to see him have those moments of joy with her, and we do get that later on once the meadow scene kind of passes and he realizes they've made it through the knot and on the other side, and that Bella's safe and that he is safe enough for her to not, just kill her whenever he feels like it, and he can actually kiss her without just ripping her throat out. Whatever. I loved Bella's account of the meadow, and I really wish we got to just see him just let go for a full day. He lets go for 5 minutes at a time maximum, and then he's back up to being so tense that I don't know how vampire muscles work. I don't think they can work out and build them or anything. There's no way he doesn't have tension headaches. Also, speaking of Edward never shutting up, there are multiple times in the book where he will ramble for multiple pages at a time about something that he's thinking about, and then he'll say, "Only a second had passed and she didn't notice my hesitation." We get it. Everything we can do, you can do better. Ugh, for someone who hates himself, he sure is an arrogant ass. And speaking of things that irritate me to no end, is the treatment of Jacob Black's character, because Edward himself can read Jacob's mind, and he mentions on multiple occasions, whenever he can hear Jacob's mind, that Jacob has a very sweet and pure mind, that he is good through and through. He is what Bella would describe him as, sunshine. So explain to me how sweet sunshine boy, confirmed by a mind reader, turns into the toxic, manipulative meathead that we see in Eclipse, who emotionally manipulates and sort of abuses Bella to the point where he threatens to kill himself, and she has to kiss him in order for him to not kill himself in battle. Make it make sense. Or kisses her without her consent and she punches him, and then he laughs when she breaks his hand. Jacob from Twilight and New Moon he would never have done that. Give me the character, Stephanie. You don't know how to take care of him. I just hand him over. You are not allowed to touch him. If you so much as breathe in his direction, I will tell the Mormon church. Ruined a character just for your own selfish triangle needs, because you had to crank out a third book and you just decided, he's not important. The wolves aren't important. I'll just take away all sense of their humanity and anything redeeming about them and make them angry and imprint on people, which also takes away their ability to have free choice. And that was the whole reason Jacob was no, Bella, because it's a choice, you can't take it back, it's permanent, and you should be able to choose for yourself. And Jacob hated the idea of imprinting. He hated it. He didn't want his freedom of choice to be taken away. Also, it's a real tribe. The Quilliettes are a real tribe. I was already mad about Jacob's character, but seeing it confirmed that he was through and through a good-hearted, sweet, pure person just shows that he was corrupted by Stephanie. That's the only option, because there's nothing really that happened to him other than becoming a wolf sometimes. That shouldn't have changed his whole character. It didn't. In New Moon, it didn't. It was just Eclipse. Ugh. I'm mad about that. I will die mad about it. Another fun addition is we actually get to see Bella's reaction to seeing Edward in the sun for the very first time, because I don't know if you remember, but in the Twilight book, the chapter about the meadow starts off with them having already been in the meadow for a while, and she's staring at him in awe. But we don't actually get to see her very first initial reaction to him stepping into the sunlight. In this one we do, and she freaks out because she thinks she runs up to him and she's like, "Is that hurting you? Are you okay?" Because according to Edward, it would look like he was on fire. It's not just some sparkly makeup thrown on them. It's supposedly blinding to look at, to the point where she thought he could have been on fire, or at least, the very least, in pain. Anyway, that's just so much cooler than what they showed in the movies. And I give Miss Catherine Hardwicke a pass because she had a low budget. I don't know if you know this, but the first Twilight movie was actually an indie movie, so they didn't have the budget. But everyone else, no excuses. They never really seemed to care about character consistency as far as how they looked. The wigs changed every other scene. So I know that it's not because they wanted to keep it consistent. In the first Twilight book, he played piano for her. He played her lullaby. It caused her to tear up a little bit. She cried, and he wipes the tear from her face and puts it in his mouth. And he never tells her why. And Bella said, like, it happened so fast she wasn't even sure it really happened. That scene lives in my mind rent-free. I should have known that there was no explanation that would have satisfied me, because the only thing that would have been maybe okay is that he can't drink her blood, so maybe, like, her tear would be the closest thing to knowing what her blood tastes like. That's still not great. Or maybe it's because he hasn't been able to cry, which I think is just some bull, and I refuse to accept it. In my canon, vampires are capable of crying, and their tears are just venom, just like every other bodily fluid is supposedly venom. But there you go, Stephanie. Vampires actually do cry. Screw you. But anyway, nothing really would have satisfied, but those are my two theories. And what's actually in the book is much worse. Oh, I never thought it could get worse, but it did. Nothing gets digested by vampires other than blood. So that's why they have to, like, throw up any food that they eat. So it's kind of funny to think about the fact that he ate a piece of pizza in front of Bella and then later had to go, like, hack it up. So he says, I swallowed Bella's tear. Perhaps it would never leave my body. After she left me, after all the lonely years had passed, maybe I would always have this piece of her inside me. Oh, it just, I don't know how it got worse, but it did. It cost you $0 to just not write that, to just not have written it in the first book and not have written it here. Now I'm minutely disappointed at the lack of Cullen interactions that I was hoping for. I know the story is about Edward and Bella, but I was hoping from Edward's point of view we would get to hang out with the Cullens more, you know, keeping up with the Cullens, whatever. I still feel dissatisfied. I feel like there wasn't enough. We do get to see the very first time Edward and Rosalie bond, and it's when she brings Emmett home and she's worried that he's gonna die because he was mauled by a bear. And Edward and her kind of, like, leave the house and go for a walk, and they kind of bond in that moment. And I think that's kind of sweet. That's the very first time they really feel like a brother-sister connection. Which also, God, make it make sense. She's mad at Edward for falling in love with a human when that's quite literally what she did and what Carlisle did. The only people in the story that didn't fall in love with a human were Alice and Jasper. They were both already vampires when they met. She can't hold that against Edward, but it's the inconsistency. And I don't blame Rosalie for that. I blame Stephenie Meyer's writing of her character, because, oh my God, Edward, like every other line, is talking about how shallow Rosalie is. And I'll tell you what, I think she's brilliant in that she doesn't want Edward to read her mind or see into the depths of her soul. That's her private business, as it should be. And I think she purposefully keeps her thoughts very shallow. This is not unheard of. Alice does this all the time. Whenever she thinks or knows something about the future, whatever, she did this in Eclipse multiple times, where she didn't want Edward to know what she was thinking, so she would, like, translate Russian alphabet letters in her head or something to, like, keep her brain occupied so that he couldn't read any more than what she was thinking on the surface level. I think anytime Rosalie is within earshot as far as Edward's abilities, anytime she's within earshot of him, she just shuts it off. She just only thinks about vain things, like how beautiful she is, because she knows it pisses him off. Someone capable of, like, the deep amount of love that she has for Emmett and for her family, there's no way that she's just always thinking about her beauty and how great she is and just her perfect self and her perfect life, and she's just shallow and whatever. No, absolutely not. She's brilliant, and she's purposely keeping Edward out, and Edward's too arrogant to notice. Like, so what if she thinks she's beautiful? Is she not allowed to think that? Just, get over yourself. You have low self-esteem. We get it. Out of all the Cullen interactions, though, my favorite will always be Emmett, because he is just such a bro. Emmett is just so supportive in everything, and I love him. When Edward is going on and on about how good Bella's blood smells, he's like, well, just drain her like a juice box, my guy. Live your truth. Oh, you're in love with her now. Okay, cool. I'm quite literally just vibing, so I definitely want to meet her. That'd be fun. This book is just exhausting. I was so excited to read a story about a depressed, lonely, immortal teenager falling in love for the very first time, and homie won't even let me enjoy it for more than, like, 2 seconds. And there's 2 chapters in this book that didn't exist in the original book, and that's because Bella wasn't around for them. This is when she's in her confrontation with James. The Cullens are on a high-speed chase down the highways of Arizona, and it's incredible. They cause, like, a 26-car pileup in the meantime, and during that time, Alice is, like, seeing visions and trying to navigate their way so that they can, like, get there as quickly as possible, what cars are fastest. And then in another chapter after they've already rescued Bella, the chapter is called Chores, and she's going through all the different ways that they're going to cover up what happened to Bella and make it like a normal thing. For example, the story is that she fell down some stairs and through a window. So Alice is figuring out how to fabricate evidence, what hotel she's going to go to, what she's going to wear, how she's going to do it, where she's going to get, blood from to make it look like a real crime scene. It's all exists in her head, but it's like one of the most fascinating and enthralling chapters. Like, I'm excited and adrenaline's pumping the whole time, but it's all just like scenarios she's thinking up, and then if she hits a snag, she goes back, changes one of her actions, and then sees how it plays out. And all of it goes on, lasts maybe like 5 minutes, but it seems like hours because she's planning hours, the whole day out, and it's all in like 5 minutes in her head, and it's just, oh, it's so cool. I love her so much. Speaking of the car chase, this isn't really super important, but why did I always think they just ran? Because I guess in the movie it's actually nighttime when Bella gets to the studio, so they could have run in theory, but it's actually daytime, and that's just so funny to me. Why did I always think they just ran? But instead it's this car chase, and it's so fun. It's what the book review I did last time on that like weird Christian fiction series, it's what they wanted to do. It's what that author wished he could have done. Stephanie Meyer, author of Twilight, wrote a better action sequence than 4 books worth of action drama, whatever, from that Clavin, whatever his name was. I don't care. I knew they'd make it in time because I know how the story ends, and yet I was still like on edge, and I felt the sheer panic of it all. And like, as much as it pains me to say it about Stephanie Meyer, that's some good writing, baby! And Edward's reaction in the ballet studio was more than I could have ever dreamed. I was so ready. I was so excited for the angst of it all, for him to see her and what he was thinking, what was going through his head, and it did not disappoint. This was the one reaction from Edward that did not disappoint me. A few pieces of this scene that are really just, ooh, get me. Rambling the same words over and over again. Her name, no, please, again and again, like a record skipping. I wasn't in control of the sound. I heard myself screaming Carlisle's name, but he was already there, kneeling in the blood on her other side. The words pouring from my mouth weren't words anymore, just mangled, heaving sounds, sobs. Carlisle's calm voice was the antithesis to my raw screaming. Just the idea of that kind of emotional reaction from someone who's trying to be calm, cool, and collected this whole time. I eat it up. I gobble up any emotional vulnerability, especially from a male character. I was so worried that during the scene he was going to try to be like locked down real cool because he was like didn't want to breathe in her blood or anything, but the fact that he just absolutely was like unhinged. Carlisle mentioned that her leg was broken, and Edward said, a howl of pure rage ripped through the room, and for a second I thought Emmett and Jasper were in trouble. I touched their minds. They were already gathering up the broken pieces, and realized that the sound had come from me. The idea that this immortal vampire who's always in control of himself and everything, and he can stroke a bubble without popping it, whatever, loses control of himself to the point where he is like screaming and like a guttural roar is coming out of him, and he doesn't even realize it's him. I want to absolutely like eat this page. I want to consume it. I want to swallow it like the tear. I want it inside me and to reside in me. You know what? Maybe I can empathize with Edward. I hate that those words just came out of my mouth. My final note on this book, and my biggest grievance with it, my absolute all-consuming hatred, is the fact that Edward knew he was going to leave Bella like he did in New Moon when she was still in the hospital. It's like her first or second night in the hospital. Alice comes up and she has the videotape that James had taken during the time where he was like torturing her, whatever, and Edward forces himself to watch it. And now this part is actually like I really enjoyed it because he is trying to find somewhere secluded and somewhere to be alone, and he finds a church that is connected to the hospital. I guess it's considered a chapel then, and it was empty, and there was like a huge organ and pews, and he's like laying on the floor of this church after he finishes the video, curled up in a ball and praying to a God that he does not believe in. He doesn't believe there is a God for someone like him because of what he is. You know, he's just this awful, terrible thing. But he's like, if there is maybe Bella's God, he prays to a God he doesn't believe in for Bella and for the strength to leave her, basically. He's praying, and it's like, oh, the existential yearning and dread just absolutely gets to me. Poetic. I am a sucker for the idea of an immortal being curled up on the floor of a church connected to a hospital where his lover lays in between life and death. Will she make it after fighting for her life against other immortal beings? And she's just this fragile human, and he's curled up on the floor of this chapel by an organ with stained glass windows in the middle of the night, praying to a God he doesn't believe in for the strength to leave her in order to protect her. While I hate the fact that it's the leave her part, it's the idea of the love to protect her. I hate that I love it. I hate that I love it. I hate Twilight. I hate that I like Twilight. Before the meadow scene, when Edward is meeting with Alice and they're going through the knot, all of the different visions, there were multiple different outcomes. There was obviously the main two that were the most solid in Alice's mind, which were Edward was either going to kill her or she was going to become what he is. And he could not accept that she would ever be what he is. But he also couldn't accept that he would ever kill her. So he was trying to find this way, obviously, to be with her and leave her human and like his own suffering, whatever. And we're all just forgetting that Bella has a choice in all of this, and just forgetting that she might choose to want to be like that and won't resent him because he was so worried she would resent him like Rosalie. There was also a vision where Edward was able to leave for a little while, and she sees what happens to Bella. She sees exactly what we see in New Moon. And Edward, being able to read her mind, sees it too. He sees what it will do to Bella. And he still deludes himself into thinking that she's better off. And the vision is Bella's face from 1,000 different angles, always tinted gray, sunless. She was thinner, unfamiliar hollows beneath her cheekbones, deep circles under her eyes, her expression empty. One could call it lifeless. And he says, "What's wrong? Why is she like that?" And Alice replies, "Because you left. She's not... doing well." And then Edward even says that he knows if he were to come back to check on Bella and he saw her like that, and I quote, "Myself in the shadows watching, creeping back into Bella's room, seeing her suffer through a nightmare, curled into a ball, her arms tied around her chest, grasping for air, even in her sleep. I felt an echo of the emotions that I would feel then, in this vision of the future, and I knew I would come back just to check, and then when I saw this, I would wake her, I would not be able to watch her suffer." He knew what would happen. He knew. Like, beyond what should have been beyond a shadow of a doubt, because Alice showed him the future, and I know Alice's visions are subjective, but they're only subjective to the choices of others. So Edward's choice to leave Bella leads to this certain future that Bella will be a lifeless creature, curled in on herself, aching, screaming in her sleep, and it only takes a few days for him to just decide that that's okay. Because what really gets me is Alice doesn't see a positive outlook. She's never like, well, Bella will go through this awful time 5 years from now, 10 years from now, she'll be fine. She never says that. She never gives him anything to hold on to that's optimistic about him leaving Bella. And yet he still gets it in his pig-headed brain that he knows better. He knows better than psychic, almost omniscient Alice. He knows better what's good for Bella than Bella herself. That he is the one who has to make this choice when it's not all about him. And this, it continues to get me because Alice saw this happen, and she, like he said, curled in on herself, gripping her own knees because she felt that ache watching Bella. Because Alice loves Bella. She cares about Bella like a sister already. She loved her before she even got to meet her because of all the visions she had. You're telling me when they were all forced to leave, first of all, that Alice would even agree to leave? She would have just stayed behind just to spite Edward, to take care of Bella. And even if somehow he deluded all of them into thinking it was the right thing to do to leave, she would definitely have somehow maintained an email address, phone number, something for Bella to contact her because she cares enough about Bella to stay in contact with her. There's no way Alice would have abandoned Bella after seeing that. Because in New Moon, Edward sees flashes of what Bella was like through like Jacob's mind or Charlie's mind, whatever, and he's like, I didn't know it would get this bad. Homie, yes you did! You're just that stupid that you tried to pretend that it wasn't real or something. Oh, it pisses me off. It pisses me off. Oh my god. He decides then in April he's gonna leave her. And September is her birthday, when he's dancing with her and they're having the conversation about him changing her, and he says it's an impasse, and she's like, I'm not gonna settle, and he's not gonna settle, but we'll work it out. She's thinking like, we're gonna work this out. She has no idea that while she's thinking that, he's thinking, I'm gonna treasure these moments I have now because I know they won't last forever, because I'm going to leave her, and I'm going to leave her as soon as I can. The reason he doesn't leave her yet is because he gives himself excuses. So when she was in the hospital, he couldn't possibly leave her then. If she still has a broken leg, by the time they go to prom, her leg's still broken. So he's like, well, I can't leave her while she's still broken. I need to make sure she's 100% okay. So I'm assuming that even by the time it was her birthday, he was still making up excuses, and then all it took was for Jasper to attack her. We seem to think from Bella's point of view that Edward had no intentions of really truly leaving her until Jasper snapped, and then only took him 2 days to decide, yeah, I'm gonna leave the love of my life behind, sure. No. Not only did he already plan it and already have it settled in his mind from the time she was in the hospital, like she wasn't even conscious. She was in the hospital 1 day, and he decided he was going to leave her without talking to her first about what she wanted, because God forbid anyone take into consideration what Bella wants. He knew what it would do to her, and he did it anyway. I still enjoyed reading this stupid book. And I covered as much as I could. I've been sitting here filming for like 3 hours, it feels like. My camera died halfway through. That only happens when I've just been talking way too much. And I'm sure there's still plenty more to be discussed, so, you know, there's other videos out there. I am not the final word in anything. Yeah, I read it, and I'll read it again, and I'll still get the same twisted satisfaction I get from reading anything Twilight related. Like, the hatred never really fully outweighs whatever it is that compels me to continue enjoying these stories. Why am I condemned to a life of only enjoying fiction filled with angst and yearning? If a book doesn't make me angry, I guess, you know, at the end of the day, I didn't really have fun, because I like getting worked up over everything. I like talking about things for hours on end, because the things I talk about the most are things I either really, really love or really, really hate, and this is both. This is the perfect weapon to absolutely consume my mind. For anyone who wanted my thoughts on Midnight Sun, there they are. My thoughts will never cease. I will always have new thoughts about it, but I'm not making multiple videos about Midnight Sun. I've already made, this is what, the third video I made about Twilight, but I know I reference it in other ones. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you like and subscribe, because that supports me in my endeavor to absolutely knock out Edward Cullen. He's gonna meet Thing 1 and Thing 2, and it's lights out. I sell enamel pins. This is what they look like. I'm not making any more, so they're limited edition. I also have a Patreon with a Discord, and some people get to see the videos early. Those are both linked down below if you want to click those, and also my social medias are down there, but since no one ever wants to click it, here they are on the screen, you lazy bums. Thanks for hanging out with me. I know it's been almost a month since I made a video. I just went a little bonkers, but I'm trying to be human again, so here I am. But anyway, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
I put my foot in my mouth again.